guys, it's Kelly here. I'm back with another video for Whimsy Stamps, and this is another stamp from the new release, January 2016. This is Morali, and from the moment that I laid eyes on this stamp, I just saw her reflection in the water. So that was what I went in with. So I'm using my Misty to stamp it, and these are red rubber stamps, so you want to make sure you remove the foam insert because they already have foam on them. I'm going to be using some W+9 pure black ink, and this is because it is waterproof, so once it dries, you're good to go. It's not going to smear with any sort of watercoloring. And I am stamping on Canson Monteval 140 pound watercolor cardstock. And because watercolor paper is textured, I'm using the Misty so I can stamp it a couple of times, and then I'm also going to stamp it on a scrap piece of acetate. This is just some leftover packaging that I have, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. I'm using the same W+9 ink. Once it's dry, it's not going to go anywhere, and I can use it for what I need it for. Here you can see it on the acetate as well as on the watercolor paper. It's cut slightly bigger than my card front. I went ahead and taped it down to my board. And now you can see the reason that I stamped it on the acetate was so I could flip it over. I am not an artist in the traditional sense of drawing, and it's very difficult for me sometimes to visualize something I'm not familiar with, and I wanted her for reflection to be accurate. So what I'm doing with the acetate is holding it down so I can see where the colors should be. So her dress is going to be orange, the butterflies are going to be that hot pink color, and I'm just using that as an aid for me so that I know where my colors will go. And again, maybe with practice I would be able to eyeball this, but right now I can't, and I'm not willing to risk it. So I'm using a little bit of a flesh color and then her brown for her hair, and I'm filling the rest in with a lighter blue toward the center and a darker blue on the edges. The only hang up with this is usually as I color an image, I pick my colors as I go. In order to do the reflection first, I had to pick my colors first, and that was based on what I had in the 36 pack of the Zig Clean Clear color markers, because that's what I used. In the background behind her, I wanted it to be just the illusion of some greenery. So I'm putting down a good amount of water. I'm using a large flat or a wide flat brush to do that, and I'm not touching any of the pigment yet. I have found for me personally that the zigs work better if I bring the water to the pigment versus putting my brush down in the pigment and bringing it out to the water. So I'm just putting clean clear water on everything, and then I'll begin to like I said, touch that water to the pigment. So where it's already wet, I'm going to bring that into the green and then just let it kind of bloom out. When I first started doing it, I stayed with the wide brush, and it holds more water. I liked the results much better once I switched to the smaller number 2 round brush, and you'll be able to see the difference because I do the left hand side with the number 2 round brush. So I decided to do her, the top half first, because I knew I was going to have to do them separately. If I tried to do the background, the green wash, the same time as the water, they would just all run into each other, and it would not be, first of all, very pretty, I'm sure, but also it would not give the scene. There would be no like horizon line, what broke up the water and the background. So here you can see this side I'm doing with the number 2 round, and the green is much more intense, which I actually prefer. In the end, I end up doing a little bit of blotting and moving around to make it a little more cohesive, so everything kind of matched. But I kind of wish I would have done it this way on the right hand side, so it all could have been that way, but I didn't, and it's okay because I'm still happy with how it turned out. And then I use the number 2 to bring in the clear, clean water all the way to the edge of the stamp. And that's just because pigment moves around funny. So even though it looks like the top is totally white, the green has actually started to creep its way up there. And I want it to be, I want it to match. I want everything to match. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this down with my heat tool before I start working on the water. And I truly had no idea if this was going to work because I had never done it before with a bunch of different colors. So I started with the orange first, and I'm not putting down a ton of water. I'm putting down enough to get the pigment moving. I don't want it to dry immediately because I don't want those super harsh lines, but I don't want it running all over the place either. I wanted a little bit more control. And I started mixing the colors I knew that would blend well together. So I did the orange first and then the pink. And then from the pink, I went out into what would be, I guess, the equivalent of the flesh tone. Oh, I'm sorry, no, the brown, because the brown and orange and the brown and pink would be okay together. And then the flesh tone was the last one that I did. I did try to, she's clearly playing a flute or something along those lines. I wasn't in band, sorry guys. And so I did draw that in there, but it eventually does get lost. And then the lightest color is this flesh color, and I'm using very little water and just enough to kind of get it to mix with the colors next door to it, because I don't want it to be completely overtaken. And then from there, I'm going to go to the blue. I'm going to add the water in the edges before I bring it up to the pinks and oranges. And again, this is just for a little bit more control. So once I had this water down, it felt very, just very kind of rigid to me. And I wanted it to feel more fluid, more like water. So what I ended up doing, Zig Clean Clear brush markers, you can actually use on wet paper. So what I ended up doing was bringing the marker to well, I think I just did the orange and the brown because I realized it wasn't really working. So I was just doing like a couple of little stripes. I thought they would, once I blended them out, they would look like ripples. And I didn't really like the way that it looked. It felt very manufactured, probably because it was manufactured. So I tried that, and then I discovered that I really liked the way that it moved with the water. Oh, I did the pink too. I forgot I did the pink, which is like pointless because you can't even see those lines. So what I did was I didn't use it wasn't a soaking wet brush. It was a slightly damp brush, but I kind of just drew out the pinks and the oranges into the blue, and I pulled the blue into those colors, and that to me helped it feel more like water, like there was some movement. So I dried that down and I cut it down to be the size of my card front, and then I'm going to Copic color her. That W+9 ink does not, it's not what they call Copic friendly, which means if you scrub over it, it will bleed and your lightest colors will pick up black and it will smear. However, I have noticed when I am combining mediums that if I heat set this particular ink, I get very little bleeding, even with my lightest color. So like here you could see my lightest color is an E50 and I'm not smearing black all over her face. It worked out pretty nicely for me. So you could try that, or you could just not mix the mediums. Like there isn't really a way to stamp an image that you want to color with a Copic friendly ink, because none of them are safe to use with water. So I do this quite a bit. I like mixing the two mediums, so I haven't really had any issues with it for me personally, and any small smudging or smearing I might get is worth it to me to be able to have that watercolor background, because I cannot create that with my Copics. So this video is quite long because I wanted to show you the reflection technique and then also the Copic coloring. And even though I've sped it up quite a bit, it's like 3 times as fast as I'm doing it in real life, it's still like 22 minutes long. So I'm going to turn on some music and I'm going to let you watch me color. If you're interested in the Whimsy stamps, they are available in the store. They're giving away Whimsy Cash, and there's 8 different ways to enter to win if you're watching this in January of 2016. So I will link that in the description below. and I will catch you guys just at the end to tell you a little bit about the details. So at this point, all of our Copic coloring is pretty much done. We're just going to be adding in some details. So I picked a light Y and some YGs just to add in some grasses where she was sitting, because that waterline just didn't seem to make any sense. Like, I needed something that was a little more solid up front. And it's perfectly okay to use Copics over your watercolor backgrounds. You can use them together. They're not going to hurt anything. It can only, in my opinion, enhance the way that it looks. So at that point, all the coloring's done, and I'm going to use a white gel pen and add some details. This is because the card's going to be a one-layer panel, and I just feel like the details make the card. You probably heard me say that before if you've watched my videos. So I whitened up the sparkle in her eye, and then I just added a couple of little white dots to the butterflies to make them a little bit more interesting. And I did that to all of them. And I always outline all of my images. I just feel like it makes the colors pop and helps you clean up any of your edges. I love a bold outline, so I just went ahead and did that with an EK Success journaling pen. And once the whole thing was outlined, I'm just going to finish off the water with just some stripes, and I'm not being very careful. I'm not coloring the whole thing. I'm just doing stripes of clear Wink of Stella right onto the water. And then I finished off the card with it says "Hello, Beautiful." I felt like that fit it pretty nicely, and that's from the hand-lettered hello from W+9 as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you at the next one. Bye!